Talin, I hate to say it, but your previous crew were a bunch of f***ing idiots. You're one of the most brutally efficient, distant people I have ever met.
Really?
What was your captain's name?
Soko.
Man, f*** Captain Sokol. What, you saved their lives so he kicks you off the ship? Where's the logic in that, huh?
Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here with another Star Trek Lower Decks review. In this video I'm taking a look at Empathological Fallacies. Warning as always for spoilers if you've not seen the episode. So those of you who have been watching my reviews for this season know that I really love the addition of the character of Talin to the show. I feel like she's really brought an interesting breath of fresh air to Star Trek Lower Decks. Again, though, in a series that didn't necessarily need a breath of fresh air. But at the same time, I just love the dynamic that she brings and the interactions with the rest of the characters. I really feel that she's added something special to the show, and I'm very excited to see how much they've used her in this season. So you can imagine my excitement at this episode, which centers around the character of Talin, and specifically her dealing with the illogical, emotional crew of the Cerritos. Her logic is especially put to the test when a trio of Betazoids come aboard, and as we've come to expect through the character of Lwaxana Troi, these Betazoids are described variously as socialites, party girls, and are definitely a force for chaos aboard the Cerritos, even at one point hitting on the captain. Now, through the course of the episode, the crew gets more and more out of control, and naturally it's assumed that the cause of this are the Betazoid visitors, as we've seen this before, most notably in the Deep Space Nine episode Fascination, when Lwaxana Troi's, for lack of a more polite term, horniness infects the rest of the characters, inducing a sort of, shall we say, general romanticism among the crew. However, in this case, we learn it is not in fact the Betazoids who are behind this at all. They are, however, aboard the ship under ulterior motives. They are members of the BIA, or the Betazoid Intelligence Agency, investigating the attacks against vessels that we've seen throughout the season. But as I said, they are not the cause of the crew's emotional instability, rather that comes from a little bit more of an unexpected source. Talin herself, in a sort of quasi-Bendai syndrome situation, similar to the condition that afflicted Spock's father Sarek in the eponymous TNG third season episode. I've always felt that the DS9 episode Fascination was kind of a bit of a clone of the circumstances in that episode Sarek, and I feel like this episode in a kind of meta way calls out that similarity, especially when the captain at the end comments that she feels stupid for confusing Betazoid telepathic influence with Vulcan telepathic influence. Again, very similar effects. Both of those episodes kind of retreading very familiar ground, and this episode kind of poking fun at them for doing it. I really love the emotional catharsis that Talin comes to in a way that only a Vulcan can, and thanks to a pep talk from Mariner, coming to terms with the fact that she is
Vulcan as a motherfucker.
Her arc over the course of this episode, from desperately wanting to leave the Cerritos and get back to the Vulcan ship, to the end where she is finally able to transmit her message, but decides not to, electing instead to remain aboard the Cerritos. Maybe understanding from Mariner that she hasn't been treated entirely logically by the Vulcans. I also want to give a shout out to Wendy Malick for her voice of one of the Betazoid women. I love Wendy Malick. I think I first saw her years ago on the sitcom Just Shoot Me. She also has a good career in voice acting as well. You may recognize her voice from The Emperor's New Groove, one of my all-time favorite Disney films. We also learn that Caitians used to hunt and consume Betazoids, leading to some kind of darkly hilarious moments between Dr. T'Ana and the Betazoid visitors. Caitians now only consume synthetic Betazoid, which is also somewhat disturbing. Other great moments in this episode come with Dr. T'Ana kind of being overcome by this emotionalism and wanting to hunt the Betazoid women down, and the scene where Shax stops her, basically grabbing her by the scruff of the neck and holding her there. A great visual and a wonderful scene between these two characters. I also want to call attention to when the Betazoids hijack the Cerritos. and almost cross into the Romulan neutral zone, but turn away at the last second. And the disappointment exhibited by the Romulans who are lurking there, waiting for them to cross. Beautiful moment. I love that. We also have some more hints about the invading ship that's been attacking vessels, with this kind of blurry image obtained by the Betazoids and given to Starfleet in this episode. So moving on to the B plot, we have Boimler, who's kind of chafing against his responsibilities as a Lieutenant Junior grade, putting a lot on himself to learn everybody's name and know everything that he feels he should know with this higher rank. And Rutherford nominates him for something called the Program. He gets in touch with Shax, who takes Boimler to this super secret meeting with the security staff, only for him to find out that they're doing slam poetry and building puzzles and playing with tarot cards. I enjoyed this part of the story. I really liked the message of it, especially Shax's kind of holistic approach to security, looking after not only the safety of the crew, but the mental health of the crew as well, and making sure they're all okay. I thought that was really cool and a nice little message, and just so typically Shax. We've seen that he has to deal with a lot of PTSD and trauma from his past. To see how he's dealt with that and how he takes those lessons and extends them to his fellow crew members, that's really wonderful to see. So I thought that was a great part of the story. And I love that Boimler comes to that realization that the security team aren't just a bunch of badasses who spring into action, but they certainly can do that when the situation calls for it. So lots of Easter eggs in this episode. We get a mention that the Betazoids have just left Angel 1. That is from the TNG first season episode of the same name. They're on their way to Risa, and the Cerritos drops them off there at the end of the episode. We have references to Romulan ale. We see this painting of a Vulcan landscape in Talin's quarters. That is from the Star Trek The Motion Picture Remastered Director's Edition. Boimler mentions Sunkatse, which is the martial arts contest featured in the Voyager episode of the same name. That was the episode featuring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Xanthi fever, as I mentioned, comes from the Deep Space Nine episode Fascination, and Bendai syndrome comes from the TNG episode Sarek. We have security officers doing slam poetry about Worf. Kayshawn does Starfleet security officer charades about Constable Odo from Deep Space Nine. Not technically a Starfleet security officer, but we'll give it a pass. The security team is working on a Malcolm Reed puzzle in their off time. This Romulan neutral zone map comes from Star Trek The Original Series, the episode Balance of Terror. And we have the Bajoran tarot cards, along with the invasion card, which is technically a rebirth, according to Shax. We also have the Borhaya, which is a Bajoran ghost, first mentioned in the TNG episode The Next Phase. The Emissary, of course, Benjamin Sisko himself. Derna, which is a moon of Bajor seen in Season 7 of Deep Space Nine. The Celestial Temple, which is of course the wormhole, and the Orbs, which are known on Bajor as the Tears of the Prophets, seen in many episodes of Deep Space Nine. I also want to highlight when the security team springs into action, we see Kayshawn doing what has been described as a ninja run, maybe more popularly known as the Naruto run, as he races to grab a phaser to defend his ship. I loved that. I thought that was hilarious. We have this crew member in the background playing the game, the Katarian game from the TNG episode The Game. And these two crew members in Anbojitsu costumes, the martial art featured in the TNG Season 2 episode The Icarus Factor, and also previously on Lower Decks. Well, those were my thoughts on Empathological Fallacies. What did you think of this episode? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, of course, for watching, and thanks, as always, to the Patreon supporters for all of your help in bringing these shows to you. I could not do it without you. Apologies for the lateness of this video. I am working to get caught up. Life has been a little crazy lately. I recently was sick with a second bout of COVID, which was not fun. And also I just started a new job. So, you know, being sick in the first 2 weeks of a new job, that went over well. But hopefully things are back to normal now. I'm getting back on track, getting these videos out. And I hope you'll join me for the next one, which will, of course, be for the episode Parth Ferengi's Heart Place. See you then. Live long and prosper.